My mirror showed a different version of me, but why was he trying to warn me? The horror isn't seeing a ghost in the mirror, it's seeing yourself, but realizing the reflection has lived a decade more agony than you have. I'm Daniel, 38, and I'm a man defined by control, a highly successful financial strategist who measures risk in basis points, not emotional fallout. It started simply enough, a flicker of wrongness after a 12-hour workday. I was standing in front of the expansive, custom-lit mirror in my penthouse bathroom, running my hands through my perfectly groomed hair. For a split second, the reflection's hand moved slower than mine. It was a minuscule, almost imperceptible lag, like a poorly rendered video. I chalked it up to exhaustion, the kind that blurs the edges of reality after too many late nights chasing the Phoenix acquisition, a massive, career-defining merger I was leading. The next day, the reflection, the one I quickly and privately named Darian, held the lag longer. I raised my right hand, and Darian raised his, but his posture was subtly different, shoulders slumped, jaw tight. My reflection always looked confident. Darian looked utterly defeated. The first moment of stark, terrifying difference came on Wednesday. I was reviewing the final, cutthroat terms of the Phoenix deal, a move that would ensure my promotion to managing director but required quietly eliminating my biggest rival, Marcus 40. I looked up at the mirror. My reflection Darian wasn't looking at me, he was looking down at his own hands, which were shaking. He wasn't wearing my sharp suit. He was wearing a thin, threadbare gray sweater, and his reflection's face was marred by a thin, jagged scar running right above his left eyebrow. I leaned closer, my heart thumping against my ribs, demanding a rational explanation, a smudge, a trick of the light, anything. But the scar was deep and real in the mirrored image. It wasn't fading, it was a permanent line of agony, etched onto a face that was otherwise mine. My mirror showed a different version of me, but why was he trying to warn me? The realization was a punch to the gut. Darian was me. He was a version of me who had clearly suffered profoundly, a consequence of choices I hadn't finalized yet. He was me from an alternate path, or perhaps, me from my own terrifying future. I spent the next 48 hours testing the limits of this impossible phenomenon. I moved the mirror, Darian remained. I covered it with a towel. The moment I pulled it back, he was still there, waiting. He never spoke, but his eyes, mirroring my exact shade of tired green, held a desperate plea. I held up the file for the Phoenix acquisition. I mouthed the word, job. Darian's eyes went wide with pure panic. He violently shook his head, a fierce, silent denial that rattled me to the core. He kept shaking his head, pointing past me, toward the rest of my apartment. I turned and saw the living room. My sleek, custom-designed space was beautiful but cold, filled with hard angles and expensive, unwelcoming furniture. Darian pointed at the cold marble countertop, then made a gesture as if tearing a piece of paper. The message was clear: destroy the cold structure of this life. Then, he focused on a small framed photo on my bedside table, a candid shot of my fiancé, Emily 37, laughing on a ski trip last winter. She was the one soft edge left in my otherwise razor-sharp existence. As I looked at the photo, Darian slowly raised his mirrored hand. His shaking stopped, replaced by a terrible stillness. He pointed a finger, not at the image, but at the empty space beside Emily in the frame. Then, he gently traced the outline of a simple, silver wedding ring on his own finger, a ring I didn't own, a commitment I hadn't made. He then slowly slid the mirrored ring off his finger and held his open, empty palm toward me. The meaning was devastating. I lost her. I lost the commitment. I lost Emily because of this path. The terror wasn't just the scar on his forehead, it was the emptiness in his hand. The greatest life lesson struck me with icy clarity: the cost of ambition is often measured not in money, but in the irreversible loss of connection and love. The more I pushed towards the Phoenix acquisition, the more desperate and physically wounded Darian became. I finalized the documents to undercut Marcus, deliberately leaving him exposed to a board review. I justified it as necessary ruthlessness. When I checked the mirror that night, Darian's face was bruised along the jawline, dark and spreading. He looked directly at me, and I saw a profound guilt in his eyes that mirrored the sick feeling in my own gut after betraying my colleague. The bruise wasn't physical, it was the reflection of a spiritual and moral wound. The warning intensified the next afternoon. I had a final meeting to review the closing documents. I was ready to walk out the door, briefcase in hand. I checked the mirror one last time. Darian was frantic. He slammed his mirrored palm against the glass, and I instinctively flinched. He pointed back at the scar above his eyebrow, running his finger along the jagged line. Then, he raised the same hand and pointed at a spot on the wall behind me, where an expensive, ornate bronze clock was mounted. The time on my real clock read 3:45 p.m. Darian covered the number 3 with his thumb and pointed only at the 45. He was isolating the time, 45 minutes from now. He then dramatically mimed a fall. He covered his face and convulsed with silent sobs of regret. I felt cold dread pool in my stomach. The man in the mirror was showing me not just the consequence of my choices, but the imminent, physical danger tied to a specific point in time, 45 minutes from now. This wasn't just emotional warning, it was a physical prophecy. What would you do if your own future self showed you a wound and desperately told you to stop? How long would you wait before you abandoned everything you were currently striving for? My logical mind scrambled. Was the building unsafe? Was someone coming to hurt me? The only thing that mattered was that Darian, a product of my worst possible future, was begging me to avoid whatever happened at 4:30 p.m. I ignored the meeting. I dropped the briefcase and started searching the penthouse like a madman, looking for a bomb, a hidden assassin, anything that matched a fall. Nothing. The clock ticked. 4 p.m. 4:15 p.m. I stood frozen in the hallway, staring at Darian. His face was tight with anticipation. He pointed at the floor, then at the main door of the penthouse. The imminent danger was outside. 4:29 p.m. Then, my phone rang, a call from the acquisition team. I glanced at the mirror. Darian was violently shaking his head no. I ignored the call. It went to voicemail. 4:30 p.m. The apartment was silent. Nothing happened. No explosion. No intruder. I felt a wave of confusion and crushing disappointment. Had I just derailed the largest deal of my career, potentially sacrificing my entire future, over a desperate gesture from a hallucination? I walked back into the bathroom, ready to yell at the glass. Darian was weeping silently, his whole body shaking. He wasn't bruised anymore, but he looked utterly empty. He pointed at my phone, now resting on the counter. I played the voicemail. It was my colleague, breathless and panicked. Daniel, you won't believe it. Marcus. He found out we undercut him, he snapped. He came to the office, totally lost it, stormed onto the balcony, he fell. They're saying it was 4:30 p.m. exactly. Thank God you weren't there, you were supposed to meet him to sign the papers at that exact time. The police are asking questions, Daniel, but you're clear. You missed the chaos. I sank against the cold marble wall. Marcus hadn't just fallen, he had been destroyed by the calculated, ruthless corporate strategy I had engineered. And I, Daniel, was supposed to be there, watching the emotional fallout of my own ethical failure. Darian's scar wasn't a physical wound I would receive, it was the emotional wound of witnessing the catastrophic destruction I caused in my future self's reality. Darian had gone through with the acquisition, watched Marcus fall, and had to live with the knowledge that his success was built on a death. That was the crushing, irreversible price of the Phoenix acquisition. The guilt, the self-hatred, the trauma of seeing the fall, that was the scar. The lesson burned into my soul. Ambition without integrity is not success, it is a weapon aimed directly at your own future conscience. The knowledge was unbearable. I realized Darian wasn't warning me about a physical threat to my body, he was warning me about a moral threat to my soul. He wasn't trying to save my life, he was trying to save my integrity. I immediately called the acquisition team. I killed the deal. I pulled all the paperwork, fully exposed my own role in the unethical undermining of Marcus, and resigned from Sterling and Reed. My career, the one I had built for 2 decades, imploded in a matter of hours. I lost the prestige, the salary, and the penthouse. My bank account plummeted, but the shame, the guilt, and the weight of that moral scar began to lift. That night, I went into the bathroom. Darian was still there, but he looked different. The deep bruise was gone, the scar was fading into a faint, silver line. He was still wearing the simple gray sweater, but his eyes were calm, settled. He raised his hand and mirrored me perfectly this time. He then slowly placed his hand flat against the glass, not frantically like before, but peacefully. It was a gesture of thanks, of closure. I reached out and placed my hand over his reflection. Our palms were aligned, the Daniel I am and the Darian I avoided becoming. As I watched, he smiled, not the polite corporate stretch, but a genuine, quiet smile of hard-won peace. The lines of fatigue around his eyes smoothed out, and then, Darian shimmered. He became perfectly aligned with me, flawlessly mirroring my every movement, until he was just me again, a single reflection, whole and unbroken. The mirror was just a mirror again. I never saw Darian again, but I carry his scar, the lesson, with me every day. I took a massive pay cut, started working for a nonprofit focused on ethical city planning, and finally married Emily. We moved to a small house with a yard, trading cold marble for warm wood. The profound life lesson Darian left me with endures. You never regret the success you failed to achieve, but you will spend a lifetime mourning the love and integrity you failed to protect. I want to know what you think. If you had the undeniable chance to see the true, devastating cost of your highest ambition reflected back at you, would you sacrifice everything you built over 2 decades, money, power, reputation, to save a life you hadn't even lost yet? Let me know your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.